Hello and welcome back to Nova Scotia, where we've got more motorized mayhem on the docket for today. If you're new here, I'm Shannon Makes, renovation soldier by day, circus artist by night, and we're joined on this adventure by Canel, corgi with a character as big as her stick, and Phil, comic relief, ladder in a pinch, and solder extraordinaire. And for the last few weeks, the guest star has been Jean.
Hey, la lèvre avec deux doigts. Et des biceps de doigts vraiment forts.
Quick recap on where we are. I'd bought the house 10 months earlier, sight unseen and as is, meaning it came full of antiques and loads of junk. Slowly but surely the attic was emptied, antiques were sorted, dumpsters were filled, and the basement was slowly turned from a moldy swamp into a more usable workspace. And in the last few episodes, we've been using Jean's expertise with the heavy machinery to regrade the property and start installing a rock wall that'll help protect the house from the hill it's sitting on. So far, we'd gotten not one, but two giant truckloads of boulders, and today started off with a third and final delivery.
Okay, whoa!
You can see that this load was a bit smaller, and that's because the wall was mostly done at this point and we just needed a few last rocks to finish up the end. Meanwhile, Canel was just thrilled that she'd found a tasty and well-seasoned stick for the day's fetch sesh. If she could only free it from the ground, that is.
You having fun in the wet? Huh? You having fun in the wet?
So if we want to take a look at the mostly finished wall, this is what it looks like. It's 2 tiers of rocks, and each tier is made up of 2 rows. The bottom layer has the slightly larger rocks, and the top level has the slightly smaller ones, and then the 2 levels come together gracefully here as they turn the corner and taper off to meet the level of the soil towards the front of the house. Now, if we look at clips of the backyard from before, you'll see that this doesn't look that much different from the original topography of the land, except that now all that soil, which in the original backyard was free to slowly but surely slide down the hill and pile up at the back wall of our house, that will all be held at bay by the rock walls and then eventually the roots of the plants that'll get planted back there. Plus, the soil around the house has all been graded ever so subtly away from the house on all sides so that the rain naturally runs away from our basement instead of funneling right into it. Also worth noting that these rocks are actually really gorgeous. I know it's hard to see because they're currently all covered in mud, but they've got all these different shades of reds and blues in them that are really stunning, especially when they get wet. Also, if you look at the ground in these shots, you can kind of get an idea of the crappy conditions that Jean had to fight against. The snow from the previous videos turned into rain, and that just kind of flooded the backyard and made it an absolute nightmare to work with. Was really great for cute corgi prints though. Anyways, the plan for today is to install a French drain around the base of the rock wall, just as another line of defense against the rain. We had already installed an interior French drain in the basement and it was working splendidly, but at this point it was just so cheap and easy to throw another one in at the foot of that rock wall that we figured the more defenses against the water, the better. So while Jean dug out the trench for the drain, we ran out and got more supplies, including some PVC piping and more perf pipe. So the excavator did the majority of the work creating the trench, and then we went in with the level and fine-tuned it, making sure that the pitch was correct across the entire span of the backyard. Once the trench was all set, we could start installing the drain, and it's literally the same exact process that we did in the basement, except that this time we're freezing our butts off. So, first step is the geotextile fabric. First, we started by using the leftovers that we had from the basement French drain, and then eventually opening a whole new roll. And actually, I should mention that we decided to make this whole lower section of our backyard gravel. So we're actually going to put the geotextile down in this whole area, not just along the back wall where the French drain is going to be. Cutting out a hole in the fabric for our poop pipe. Once the fabric was all laid out, I started shoveling up the leftover gravel from our basement French drain and just sprinkling it over the fabric to keep it in place. I don't know if you've noticed in previous videos, but it's really windy here in Nova Scotia, and we didn't want our fabric to fly away before we could pin it more permanently in place. So y'all know that Canelle is obviously by far the best fur baby ever, and that she's not only very well loved, but she's also very well exercised. And as she gets older, I want to make sure that she's getting the highest grade food, which is why today she is getting Sundays for Dogs, who also is the sponsor of today's video. Their fresh dog food is made from entirely human grade ingredients, so it doesn't have any synthetics, there aren't any artificial preservatives. It's formulated by vets, so I know that she's in good hands, and it's air dried, so it's healthier than regular kibble, and it's incredibly easy to use. None of the mess and fuss and hassle of raw food. And of course, and most importantly of all, Canelle absolutely loves it. 4 p.m. means dinner time, means time for Sundays. She actually likes it so much that I've started to use it as a high value reward in our training sessions. So if you are looking for an alternative to traditional dry kibble for your dog, but maybe you're hesitant of the mess and fuss or time commitment, oh hi honey, of a raw diet, then definitely give your dog the chance to try Sundays and watch them fall in love. You can get 50% off of your first order. You can get 50% off of your first order at sundaysfordogs.com/makes50 or use my code makes50 at checkout. You know, if you wouldn't be so dark, you wouldn't be messing up my exposition as much. Did you ever think about that? Did you ever think about that? This is the thing, Canelle's never tall enough to get in the way of my camera. It is a blessing and a curse. And just in time, gravel delivery number 2. That is one massive pile of gravel. And then in the middle of all of this, besides doing the work and filming the work, I was also premiering my second ever house episode. If you haven't joined us for a live premiere, you should try it out sometime if your schedule allows. There's a live chat where people discuss the episode, and it's just a good time. So definitely consider giving it a try. So back to the work, laying out the fabric for the side of the backyard. And here I ran into a bit of a challenge because we had almost enough fabric to cover this section, but it did look like we were going to be a little bit short, which kind of left this awkward triangle of soil exposed. Fortunately, though, my many years of sewing and having to make very efficient and creative use of limited yardage came in clutch here. So with a bit of rearranging and creative problem solving, eventually I managed to get the entire backyard covered. Then it was time to start filling the trench, and my favorite part of the process was definitely the fact that this time it was Jean hauling buckets of gravel over to the French drain and not me. John used the excavator to quickly and roughly distribute the bulk of the gravel around the yard, and then Phil and I would go in and fine-tune it by hand with the rake and the shovel. And because the clay underneath is graded to the proper pitch, it doesn't actually matter if the gravel layer on top is perfect or even or level, it just has to look okay. And similarly to lying down sod, this was the moment where the backyard started to undergo a very rapid and satisfying transformation. I mean, okay, it might not be quite as satisfying or vibrant of a change as laying down sod, although I will say that having laid down plenty of sod in my life, it is significantly less back-breaking. But yeah, within the span of about an hour or so, the backyard went from being a soggy mess to looking like somebody actually put some thought and intention behind it. So obviously the drain does a jaunt around our whole backyard at the foot of that rock wall, where it then transitions to PVC as it comes towards the front of the house. And we figured that this was actually going to be a great opportunity to connect our gutter situation into this whole system so that eventually the gutters could drain into the same pipe and then exit at the front of the house, where all the water would naturally flow downhill and away from our foundation. Once again, there were occasionally too many chefs in this kitchen because it definitely does not take 3 people to install drain pipe, so I found some other equally important tasks to occupy my time. And here's the final system. The perf pipe transitions to PVC, which has a junction to catch the rainwater from the gutters, and then continues on to the front of the house. And with this side done, Jean could cover it back up, and then we could turn to the other end of the drain and the other side of the house. Oh boy, this side. This is the side entry to the house, which is also the one that we use most frequently. And you'll remember that Phil did some temporary surgery on this doorway last fall.
So we now have a big hole. I removed the old all rotten threshold that was there. Used to be wood. You can see even the door jamb here that on this side is all rotten. I was considering not changing the door because a new door is $300, but we'll see. I might just rebuild another box there so I can reinstall the metal threshold, put expanding foam everywhere, and call it a day. And when we change the siding and everything, put a brand new door in, because I feel like it's wasting money to put a good door in now. It's just gonna get damaged in construction, so I'm not gonna spend $500 on an outside door frame. So yeah, box building time.
So we knew that at least part of this sill plate was water damaged and would have to be changed or replaced, so we decided to take advantage of the heavy machinery to do some further excavation and exploration.
I kind of suspect that somebody cheaped out when they installed this siding and that they didn't hang it with enough hangers as they were supposed to, and that's why some of it forgot.
Maybe. Also, some of them are a straight cut. Like okay. This here, I think. You know, maybe, yeah, because then the walls ventilation. It's just let it straight instead of dehanging it, then we nailed it back in like cheap asses.
Like cheap asses.
So right away we can see that there have been some problems and some work has been done on this part of the house prior, because under the aluminum siding, instead of finding the green asphalt that is on the rest of the house, there was just this weird layer of plywood. So already at some time in the past, there had obviously been problems with this part of the house, which honestly was no great surprise.
Non mais creuse ici. Ça c'est ton bin. Non. Détail encore.
What is this?
Unfortunately, I think it's time for a new handle.
The Canada size pickaxe.
Speaking of Canal, she is just living her best life out here. She could not be more thrilled that we have decided to spend all day out in the freezing mud and muck, unearthing some well-marinated sticks for her to chase and making lots of new piles of dirt for her to roll in. And it was actually while I was playing with her that something in the dirt caught my eye. Now, this is not the first glass container I'd found while moving all the dirt around in the past few days. I'd also found this very cool and uniquely shaped vial yesterday, and this was not really anything special in terms of shape or size, but it did inspire me to dig around a bit more, and I also found this guy, which I thought was pretty neat. I obviously did not do a good job filming because it's actually really hard to film with one hand and dig with the other, but look at that shape. I don't know, I think it's pretty fun. And I have to say there seemed to be a lot more glass where that came from, but I didn't have any time to investigate further, so we'll just have to save the archaeological dig for another day. And that's not all that'll be saved for another day. We only have the excavator rented for another 48 hours, and we've still got a sill plate to dig into, a crawl space to investigate, treasures to discover, problems to unearth, a French drain to finish, and several tons of metal to haul out of the basement. So be sure to tune in next week as the adventures continue.
Apporte, t'es capable. Allez, apporte. Dis pas non, t'es capable. Tu peux pas ta fille.
Mais je suis une fille.
Pas la bonne fille. Wow, oh boy, t'es pas plus bonne.